Today we're going to walk through a few different things inside of watsonx Governance. The first is going to be some of our AI features. The second is going to be what our questionnaires and surveys look like. And the third is going to be what our compliance plans look like and how they work in coordination with the answers to those questionnaires and surveys. To begin with, inside the tool, we've already landed on a use case. I'm going to bypass some of the navigation and dashboarding and reporting that we do to get here. What I want to focus on right away is going to be one of our AI features. There's going to be many different ways we can integrate AI into the platform. One that we'll look at here is going to be what we call the similarity search. It's basically just going to look at some of the detail and information within the use case. It's going to run it against one of our models. And the output is going to be a similarity search that just popped up here on the right-hand side, which is just going to tell us if we have any use cases that are similar to this one. This is just one way we can integrate AI. Another is going to be, if we scroll down a little bit, we can prepare a full summary based on all the information we've captured inside of the use case to generate what will be a system and governance performance overview. It's going to look at all the detail that we have inside this use case in the object itself and through related objects. It will provide an overview, the structure of what's within. It can help with risk rating if that's your optionality, right? We can look at different categories, different ratings it will assign it. It will look at the control effectiveness that are associated to those risks, right? How effective or ineffective they are. It'll be able to help with summarizing the compliance posture, the different legislation or internal policies you may need to be compliant with. It will track the approvals that you've been given or not given. It will look at what we're going to call red flags or inconsistencies and help with a gap analysis, as well as any recommendations to take with next steps to improve your overall risk posture or your overall compliance posture with this use case. What I really want to get down into, though, as I scroll down, is going to be our questionnaires. We're going to look at one related to risk identification, where the main goal of this questionnaire is to help identify risks from our risk library that should be associated to this use case. As I open up this questionnaire, we're going to look at first the assessment, which, as we can see, is going to be more of a completed version of this questionnaire. So as we look at some of the questions, we can see what sections they're a part of, things that you may need to acknowledge, things that you may need to explain. But then you'll get down to some of the multiple choice ones, which basically just say, what tasks will this model need to perform? Are you planning on using certain kinds of AI? Why won't lesser kinds of AI work so that you can maybe get approved quicker, right? A whole plethora of questions, which will be designed in the template. I'm going to jump to the template now. So we're going to jump into more of an administrative feature. I'll open up this questionnaire template. I'll jump to the editor for that, where you'll have full control over exactly what kinds of questions you're going to ask and exactly what kinds of automation you're going to get as a result of certain ways in which those questions are answered. So as we look at how we're able to edit these, right, you're going to be able to create intros, sections, subsections, really format it how you want with where these questions get housed. And then within each section, you'll be able to edit what will be provided out of the box. If this questionnaire kind of fits the mold of what you want to do, just tweak things. Or if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll be able to make completely new questions that you can put in completely new sections. What you'll notice is that some of these questions are multiple choice, some are text, different functions that I'll get into in a second. Before I do that, what I do just want to call out this little tree here. You're also going to have the ability to have questions that are hidden unless a different question that it's relying on is answered a certain way. As I jump into what a new question looks like, right, a few different choices we have. We can make it single choice, multiple choice, different kinds of text, or a table answer. It can be a required question or not. You'll add your question, you'll add your answers if it's multiple choice, and then there's logic or additional context that you can provide, right? If there's logic for, such as this question gets answered this way, now you then have to answer these next 3 questions that are aligned with that one, or additional context just based on what you may need to provide. I won't save that question, but what I will do is jump into what we call response actions. That is going to be how we apply automation within the tool based on how you've answered certain questions. So I'll come down here in the bottom left. I'll go to my response actions. I'll scroll to the top. We know, based on the questionnaire we're looking at, all these response actions are going to be geared towards identifying what risks from our risk library are going to be applicable to the use case we're looking at. If I come into one of these, we'll see the way in which it's constructed. Name and description, standard info at the top, but then we'll get into the applicability. This is where we'll say for question 4, question 5, question 5.2, we're going to say if they're answered in certain ways. So for question 4, if any of these are selected. Question 2, if any of these are selected. Question 3, if any of these are selected. We can then apply some logic to say and or statements. Right? If one is answered that way, and then 2 or 3 are answered in any of the ways that we've selected there, we're going to apply a certain kind of automation. The automation that we can apply could be setting fields on the use case. Perhaps we want to take in a bunch of the questions from the questionnaire, look at them, and derive an initial risk rating or initial compliance rating. We can create an object. Perhaps based on the way certain things have been answered, there is an issue that needs to be created with an action plan that gets attached. Or with what a lot of the response actions, the automation that's applied in this questionnaire, what a lot of those are driven to do are copy in objects. In this case, we're going to copy in a risk from our risk library, right? So we're going to have that central library, and then each risk would then get assigned to each use case based on how these questions have been answered. In this specific instance, right, if I jump back to the top, we're looking at a risk related to personal information in the prompt, and those questions are helping derive whether or not that is a risk specific to this use case. If it is, it'll be copied in. We'll copy it in so that the origin is now on the use case, it's an assessable risk, and it's awaiting an assessment. We also have the ability to not just copy in the risk object, but we can copy in an object below it. So we want to pull in a specific control with it. Now, for a PII risk, this control is in all likelihood going to be a guardrail to prevent it in the input or the output. But we're going to have automation that's going to help apply those things. So if I jump back to our use case, where what we've now been able to do is fill out that questionnaire, automation gets applied, these risks get pulled in, right? They've since been assessed so that we have ratings provided for each for inherent and residual. We want to do simply a risk rating. We can derive that, right? Different ways in which we can automate with the system based on what the end goal is for what information we want to derive from those questionnaires. Scrolling down further, moving past the questionnaire, we're going to jump to the compliance plan piece. This is where we'll be able to assess not just from what's been answered in the questionnaire to say we're going to build this, or this is what we've done, and then we're waiting for the approval, right? The compliance plan is going to track that in real time. So it's going to look at specific compliance plans that have been identified. They can be identified based on the results of a questionnaire, or again, we can apply AI. So as I hover my mouse, you'll see copy from library. There's a little AI button. As I click on this, we're going to look at the compliance plan library, which could be external laws, rules, or regulations, as well as internal policies that have been worked into the tool. But within those, it's the ones that have been suggested with AI, right? And I've got about 11 here that might be applicable based on what the AI thinks and the model has derived based on information in the use case. But it's just another example of where we're able to help use AI to speed up the process, right? Instead of going through and looking at every law, rule, regulation, policy that we have, it's narrowed it down to 11. It can, of course, associate these itself, and you can even take out the human step I'm going through right now where I select what needs to be copied in. But this is another example where AI can help. The compliance plans themselves are going to bubble up where we are compliant and where we're not. This one is, again, in its initial phases, so we only have a little bit here, but it's where the results of these assessments, they're going to help align with how we've answered certain questionnaires, right? Whether it's privacy impact assessments, data assessments, right? Whatever it might be, these compliance plans will help tie that together. And so that's a quick look at some of the capabilities we have here. Would love to show you more in a deeper dive. But that's a little bit of a taster right now, especially as it relates to some of the AI pieces where there's a whole lot more we can do. Thank you for your time.